So, let me start from the beginning. A few weeks ago, I think it was a few weeks ago, might have been a month ago, I picked up two of these LDMOS boards. So I started with one of them, thinking I'm going to plug it in, I'm going to play with it, I'm going to figure out how to make it work, I'm going to do everything I can. And I spent probably a couple weeks messing with it, trying to get it to work. And it does work to some extent. But the problem I'm having is that the board is advertised as putting out 3 kilowatts PEP. And under no circumstances can I get a bird meter to show more than, I don't know, I think I've seen it once go up to 1600, 1700 PEP. As it sits right now, it's brick walling at 1200 watts PEP. So I thought maybe I fucked something up. So I sent the board back to the dude that sold it to me. I said, hey, can you test this for me and make sure it works? So he tested it, he made a little video, and he showed on the bird meter, it fucking swings 3K. So I'm sitting there scratching my head, because I obviously didn't fry anything, but something I'm doing is wrong, right? So I watched the dude's video, I look at his setup, and I see everything he's got going on, from the power supply wires to the way he's got the radio fed into it, the way he's got the coax coming out of it. I looked at everything that I possibly could. And I replicated it. And I'm still having the exact same problem. So anyway, around that time I bought another board. Because I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to figure this out. And it's going to work. And then when it does, I'll have another board. And then I can finish my project. And so on and so forth. So, fast forward a couple more weeks. I've been digging with this board nonstop. I've probably put 20 or 30 hours into it. And still hitting the brick wall. Still having the same issues. And I've been emailing back and forth and talking on the phone with the dude that sold it to me. And he's had some ideas. You know, I'm not here to bash the dude. That's for sure. I'm not saying that he's lying. That's not what, and that's not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I can't get this fucking thing to work properly. And I've been through the rigmarole of this. So let me splice this video and I'll show you more. Alright, so this is the first board I picked up. As you can see, it's pretty simple. So this wire right here is 12 volts. This comes over for the bias circuit. And these two potentiometers, they adjust the amount of bias that you have. So I followed his instructions and biased them up to about 500 milliamps a piece. So when you power the board on, it draws about 1 amp quiescent current. Right now this board isn't entirely hooked up and ready to run, but you can see what I was doing. So over here we've got a power supply, 50 volts, HP. Yes, it's been checked, it's been verified, it does its job. Anyway, this wire comes over here. Right now it's disconnected. So this little coax right here, this one, comes over to the back of my radio. So when I pick this thing up, I'm under the impression, man, I'm going to hook 12 volts to it, I'm going to hook 50 volts to it, I'm going to hook a piece of coax on the outside and on the inside, and I'm going to turn on my radio, and it's going to go bam, 3 kilowatts. But no. That is very, very far from my experience with this. So like I said, I've been dicking with this for countless hours. And it's a brick wall. It does not go past this particular board right now. If I were to hook up that power supply, which it was just the other day when I was messing with it, if I were to hook it up and plug in a bird meter right there, and then a coax to a dummy load right there, it's gonna brick wall around 1100 watts peak or RMS. It'll do either one of them. It'll peak up to that number, or it'll RMS up to that number. Either one. And it doesn't matter how much power I put into it. SSB, AM, FM, CW, doesn't matter. This radio puts out about 50 to 60 watts PEP, and I've pushed that full 50 to 60 watts PEP right through this coax into the amp, and it just doesn't go any higher. Now, you might be looking at this transformer saying, where's your tuning capacitor? This is how the board was supplied, and the dude recommends that you put between, I think it was like a 20 to 100 PF capacitor on here, which I have done. I have a whole bunch of them. So I put one on there, I tweaked it, and about the only thing that improves when I put a capacitor on here is the reflect improves slightly, very slightly. As it sits right now, the reflect is very, very good. You can read it on a 10 watt slug when you're pushing 1,000 watts. So the reflect is very good as it sits right now. And if you put a capacitor on there and you tune it a little bit, you can improve the harmonic output, and you can also improve the reflect. But like I said, it's pretty damn good to begin with. So putting a capacitor on there and tuning it makes no difference in the power output. So I've tried a bunch of things. For one, I've put more capacitance on the 50 volt line. I've put plenty of capacitance on there with absolutely no improvement to the output. I've put decoupling caps on the 12 volt line here and here. I put ceramics and electrolytics, and that didn't improve anything at all. I've choked the shit out of my 12 volt line. I've choked the shit out of my 50 volt line with no improvement. I've grounded the 12 volt line to different points. I've used shielded coax for my 12 volt line. I've grounded the 50 volt line to different points. And I'm getting nowhere with it. Absolutely nowhere. So this is board number 1. And feeding it into a dummy load right now, as you see it, I'm getting 1200 watts peak maximum. No matter what you feed in, you won't get more than 1200 watts out of it. And I verified that with a bird meter, 2 other power meters, and an oscilloscope. So I know my meters aren't lying to me. If they are, there's 5 different methods for measuring power that have been lying to me by 50% or more. So I refuse to believe that. Now, you might be saying, well, something's broken over here. What's broken? Why is it not working? The power supply. Perfectly fucking fine. Puts out 50 volts. I've even taken another one, stacked it on top, paralleled the output, just to make sure that it's getting enough power, and it is. Putting another power supply on here in parallel made absolutely no difference to the power output. What about this power supply? Perfectly fine. I've been using this for months and months and months. It runs my radios. The ripple's good. It's fine. I've also tried 3 other 12 volt power supplies. It's fine. This radio, maybe it's broken. Maybe it's not putting out the rated power. Yes, it is. I've double checked. I've triple checked several different meters. I've watched the waveform on the oscilloscope. I've turned the power up and down. Everything about this radio is good. It talks. It walks. It got down. Okay? So, I sent this board over to dude, and he checked it out as is. He took it out of the box, plugged it in, put some 12 volt on it, connected it to his radio. There was a different connector on here, but it's a very moot point as of now. Plugged this into a coax, into a line section, and into a dummy load with a 2500 watt slug, and he's showing me over 3000 watts PEP with an 1800 watt dead key. Now, I haven't been able to accomplish either of those things. I haven't been able to accomplish an 1800 watt dead key, nor anything over. One time I saw it say 16,000 or 1600, 1700 PEP. That's the most I've ever gotten out of it. As it sits right now, going into a 50 ohm dummy load, it's only doing 1200. So, what the fuck is wrong here? What is wrong with this board? What is wrong with my setup? What is wrong? Power supply's fine. Radio's fine. Power supply's fine. Power in. Power in. RF in. RF out. All right, that's what when I bought this board, that's what I was expecting. 2 power wires, coax in, coax out, works. Okay, let me show you my other board, which does work, but has the same issues. All right, this is board number 2. Now you can see there's an empty spot here because I intended to put the other board in here. This board suffers from the exact same issues. Now, I had to do a little bit more to get this set up better. For example, I've got an input transfer relay, I've got an output transfer relay, and I had to tune those circuits. So, as this board sits right now, output tune is flawless, going from the output of the board to the SO239 on the back, perfect. 1-to-1 SWR, almost no insertion loss. And then over here, what we've got is our input circuit, which is a little interesting because the top one there, this one here, comes from the radio, goes into the relay, and when the relay is not engaged, comes through this coax, out to this relay, and out through here. So that's our pass-through. Our pass-through tune is good. It's like 1.1 to 1 SWR. The pass-through tune is good. Now, the other wires coming out of here engage when you key up. So when you key up, this relay clicks over, sends a signal through here, down through that bottom one, out to an attenuator. All right, and that attenuator comes back into this bottom connection here, which goes right into the board. Same thing here. That's already been tuned. We got a capacitor in there. It compensates for whatever inductance is going on in the relay. The tune in that circuit is flawless. It's 1.03 to 1 SWR. Now, same situation. We got 12-volt line coming in, which is these 2 wires. 12 volts, ground. Got decoupling caps on this board. Got a tuning capacitor on the output here. It's the same rigmarole. It's the same situation. Very little power output. Definitely not 3 kilowatts. So here I am, just trying to figure out what is wrong with this board, man. What is wrong with my setup? What is wrong with this board? I'm kind of losing my mind because the dude that sold it to me is out of ideas. He doesn't know what to say. He doesn't have any suggestions. And you know, I'm not the brightest light bulb in the bunch, so I'm just going to assume that it's something I'm doing for now. But if 3 months later from now I can't figure this out, then I'm going to assume I got duped, in that this board is not what it was advertised to be. Now, so far that's been my experience, but for now, I'm not the brightest light bulb in the bunch, and I'm going to chalk it up to something that I'm doing. I'm going to chalk it up to something that I'm doing wrong. If you have any suggestions on what might be going on with this board, what might be the problem, please let me know. Obviously, some fuckery is going to happen. Oh, you spent all that money on that board and it doesn't work. Big shocker. Yeah, I know. I bought this board for fun. I have every intention of figuring out why this board doesn't work. Come hell or high water, I will figure out every little fucking piece and part in this board and what they do and why they do it and why they work and why they don't. And I will figure it out eventually. But at the same time, when you buy a board, you kind of expect to plug the fucking thing in and it works. And that's not what I'm getting. So, any suggestions at all, let me know. Thanks.